Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talking Point on your WESN Content Capital. My name is Sean Michael Small. Once again, happy to be here on a relatively nice morning. Not too hot, not necessarily too overcast, I think. Somewhat cool, thankfully, no rain. Rain, it's a hell of a thing now when we have to look out for rain and it might cause trepidation or anxiety as some communities across Trinidad are still dealing with floodwaters, much less they haven't even had the opportunity to begin the recovery process. However, we do have to remember, even in the midst of one emergency situation, that other situations don't take a pause or don't always take a pause. While there were more widespread flooding, you could argue that some crime was being suppressed, but it was an opportunity for other criminal activities to take place. Opportunities that only come about with the chaos and the disruption of what occurs when our lives are disrupted in such a fashion as it was Monday and Tuesday and the weekend gone. So, of course, we now look to the Commissioner of Police, because crime is an ongoing issue. Coming out of the pandemic, it seemed as though it has been ramping up. As we mentioned yesterday, crime, the murder rate is more or less at an all-time high. I do believe 2 days ago, our count here by our head of news was 558 as of 2 days ago. I myself, it's just one of those things, I don't know if I want to actually actively count, but we're past 550. That would have meant that at the least last month would have had approximately 50 murders. I believe we went into last month with 505. At this pace, that means we're going to reach that 600 mark for the first time, as far as I'm aware. Of course, my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah, if he is able, he will join us via Zoom. However, the conversation has to continue. Now, to that end, before I get back with regards to some of the recent developments in our criminal justice system, today is World AIDS Day, and it's actually something I think that as a nation, we might have overlooked with the pandemic and everything else that's been going on. As I said, emergencies don't stop other situations from occurring. And we know that NCDs and the management and treatment of NCDs, non-communicable diseases, things like heart disease, things like diabetes, well, that had issues during the pandemic where people were worried about getting COVID infection, where people weren't necessarily taking it upon themselves because they didn't want to go to the clinics or the hospitals or leave the house. So their treatment fell by the wayside. And now the question is, what happened with AIDS patients, with AIDS treatment, medications? We're going to have a discussion with regards to World AIDS Day later on in the show, where we welcome 3 guests from the organization CAISO. They have launched a new toolkit with regards to some of the specific challenges that the LGBTQI plus community has, and with the AIDS, well, the autoimmune disease from the HIV virus. However, we'll have that discussion when we welcome those guests. In the meantime, I want to speak about, well, our acting commissioner was asked to rate himself. And it's interesting, his response. Now, he did say that he doesn't like to rate himself, which I believe, yes, that's good. As a public official, as much as possible, avoid that, because it's very easy to make a mistake in communication and leadership by rating yourself. If you rate yourself too low, you might not only give your critics and antagonists ammunition to use against you, but you might cause people to misconstrue the situation in a negative way unnecessarily. If you rate yourself too high, then now you might have people who might not believe you and might think that you yourself you're out of touch with reality, and they might question your judgment and the suitability for the job. It's very difficult to rate yourself and for that rating to be acceptable on all levels, because it could be technically right, but with regards to communication with the public, with regards to leadership, it might still be wrong. Easy example is sports, where the coach or the team captain might take the responsibility on themselves for a loss, even though it might actually be other players' faults. But the leadership function is to take the responsibility on themselves. Now, in this case, after being pressed, our acting commissioner, McDonald Jacob, he said he would give himself a rating of B+, stating that he thinks that strategies and initiatives that are being implemented are either working or, well, they have a chance to succeed. Basically, he believes that he is doing all that he can. And there might be some truth in that. There might be some truth in that. But there's a reason why I use the sports example. It's not about whether you actually are doing the best you can. It's actually about what message do you want to give to your subordinates and to the other stakeholders like the politicians, the bureaucrats, and the general public. Because one could argue that most of the stakeholders outside of the TTPS perhaps, and even some within, don't necessarily want to hear that you think you're doing a decent or reasonably good job when certain aspects of the criminal justice system don't seem to be giving us good results, or reasonably good results, or even average or break-even acceptable results. In some cases, yes, but in the key indicator, for better or worse, the sensationalized indicator that it is, our murder rate, well, you are the guy in the chair, and we might reach 600 for the first time. And on a technical level, it might not be your fault. You might be performing better than your last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 predecessors. It's difficult to judge these things. There's some degree of subjectivity, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the country buying what you're trying to sell? It's something that our politicians themselves don't necessarily practice either, to be fair. And as I said, you could go too far. If he said that he was a D or an F, and we have a knee-jerk reaction and we just remove him one time, and then his successor comes in and changes everything for the sake of change, because obviously he was failing, so I have to change things up. That was the mandate given to me. And then everything gets set back. All of the initiatives that might have actually had a decent shot of accomplishing something, they get reset, we start from scratch, we actually accomplish nothing. So it's not so simple. But I just don't know if B+ was the right way to go. Maybe B, you might have gotten away with a B-, a C+. Send the message that, hey, listen, for better or worse, boots on the ground, I am taking as much of the responsibility as I can. I will bear it on my shoulders. So you just go and do your work, I'll take the blame. Because I sit in the big chair. I communicate to the public. If I take the blame, hopefully the public might not necessarily blame the rank and file. I mean, I'm sure the politicians would also love getting some of the heat taken off them, but that's a whole other story. It's a leadership function, and it also shows the population that, look, I am not satisfied. B+, that's saying you're satisfied. And it's not that he said he's satisfied about the results. But to some extent, you can't control how people interpret a message. That's something that a lot of our leaders, the politicians, the bureaucrats, the forward-facing, public-facing bureaucrats, don't seem to understand. And then complain, you're misinterpreting me. Well, you have to be more careful with what you say. So, I wish he was a bit more careful. It would have been better if he did not give himself a grade at all. And if he just said that ultimately I am not satisfied with the results, I am doing everything that I can, but so far the results show that it is not enough, but we're putting our best foot forward. We have initiatives in place, and we hope that they will bear fruit down the line. And other sorts of talks like that, and I know people don't necessarily like that, but those are the things you kind of have to say. The balance between taking responsibility and setting up reasonable expectations. It's a balancing act, but it's a necessary one, because perception affects this thing, as we mentioned before with the former Commissioner Gary Griffith. Perception affects this thing a lot. If we perceive our society as being lawless, more people will be comfortable and willing to break the law. The actual statistics don't always matter. Meanwhile, of course, while customs under fire, it seems as though the claim now is that the guns aren't coming on the boats from Venezuela. We know that the boats are coming, because the South American originating gamma variant couldn't just come out of thin air among us. We know the boats are coming. We believe drugs are coming through the boats. Why not guns? I'm not too sure if I buy this that all of the guns are coming only from North America. Maybe certain guns. Maybe some of the assault rifles, because when I look at the guns that we've confiscated, the submachine guns, the assault rifles, they don't seem like the weaponry that would be commonly available in the illegal black market through third world entities that might have access to old Soviet-era arms, old, well, even relatively new Russian arms, Chinese arms. You know, because, I mean, when you look at some of the warring factions in various parts of Africa, Somali pirates, you see them with old AKs. That's not what's coming in. What's coming in looks like relatively modern, new, composite material, North American made, pretty modern looking submachine guns, assault rifles, etc. So I could believe that a good chunk of it, or at least what they get, is coming from North America. But no guns are coming from South America. And more importantly, how is it that one newspaper reports 19,002 containers entered TNT unchecked in 8 months, but it takes so long for stuff to clear? Why does it take so long for goods to clear if some of these containers are going unchecked? I mean, it's kind of like the stories we hear about the Coast Guard patrols being called off so that smugglers could pass through. And again, I'm going to be frank once again. This is why I don't like the unions of the various public institutions. The port is not a jobs program. Customs, especially, is not a jobs program. The Coast Guard is not a eat a food jobs program. We can't have these things like CPEP and URP, which is bad enough, which is technically unethical, immoral, illegal, etc. But our law enforcement apparatus at various levels is plagued by the same bloated inefficiency of other areas of our public service. The difference is the severity of the consequences. What do we hear from the unions? More money, more money, more money, more money, more money, more money. Okay, I have no problem with more money. I do think that, well, I wonder, perhaps our teachers should get more money. The responsibility they have is great. Policemen potentially should get more money as well. But where is the performance? Because there's an interesting phenomenon. Again, let's go back to sports as an analogy. In professional sports, there are two types of athletes. The great ones, and then the ones who are great until they get their contract that they want and they sign it, and then all of a sudden they fall back down to average, or even less than average. Some of them just fall into nothing. See, some are great, and they get rewarded with a contract, and they continue to be great. And then there are some that are not. And as an overall whole, if our public service gets the raises that they want, are they trying to sell us the story that everybody will be great? That everybody will work hard? Well, they're not working hard now. And it's not about the money now, because whenever they got their back pay and their raises and whatever, there was never a point in time where, oh, we got what we want, now we're going to work hard. You see, we didn't work hard before because we were unhappy and disgruntled, but now that we got what we want, we're going to work hard. No, I have never heard that story, ever. And like I said, this situation, the consequences, well, the unions don't want to bear them. They don't want to take that responsibility. But anyway, thus is another chapter, extension, segment, area. Our crime situation is complex. Our leadership is a bit too straightforward, I would say. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, hopefully we'll have all our guests from CAISO to speak about World AIDS Day and their efforts with regards to the AIDS epidemic and the LGBTQI plus community and their advocacy. Folks, we'll be right back. Show Michael Small on Talking Point.
Better Value Limited has been making gift giving easier and more affordable for over 26 years. Power tools, indoor, outdoor furniture and accessories, mini appliances, designer fragrances, houseware and home decor products, and all your bridal registry items. Now in stock, our stylish loft bed and study desk combo unit for just $16.50. Better Value Limited. Call 235-3709 or visit us at Princestown or Gulview, or check our Facebook page.
Your Christmas is safe with us at PCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union. Your Christmas is safe with us at PCU. Police Credit Union. PCU. Police Credit Union.
Get an easy zero-interest Christmas loan at Police Credit Union today. Borrow up to $25,000 with affordable monthly payments. New members, you get up to $10,000. No interest, no installments until January. Apply online at www.policecreditunion.com. Loan subject to credit approval.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Make every occasion a sparkling celebration with Rosabella alcohol-free wine.
Toast cheers with hourglass rings. Rosabella, live life with Rosabella sparkling drink.
Have a content capital Christmas. It's the best time of the year. Now I know we have no snow, but Christmas is still here. Ho ho, the Christmas shows each week for all to see. Movie classics wait for you and a local content for free. Have a content capital Christmas, and in case you didn't hear, oh by God, we have a content capital Christmas this year. Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And today, as I mentioned earlier, is World AIDS Day. And there's a lot there that we as a nation might actually be overlooking with everything that has gone on within the last 2 to 3 years. One of the things, of course, is just the impact on the health of members of our population as these emergency situations keep popping up one after the other. Now with the floods, there's concern about access to healthcare by the affected communities. And we can't take it for granted that AIDS as a disease, the HIV virus, is limited and it only affects a small segment of the population and they will be fine. Because at the end of the day, all of these things add up. Now, to speak on this, as well as with regards to the toolkit that the organization CAISO is launching with regards to AIDS or the challenges and issues of AIDS for the LGBTQI plus community, I have with us three representatives of the organization CAISO. We have Dominique Absalom, a volunteer and the author of the toolkit. We have, I am very sorry if I got your name wrong or if I'm going to get your names wrong. We have Ray Alibe. If I'm wrong, please correct me. She is the CAISO Community Caseworker for Wholeness and Justice, and Joanna Ray Reyes. She is the CAISO Projects and Community Outreach Associate. Ladies, good morning, and thank you for coming on Talking Point to have this discussion with me.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, so some general issues first, I think, because a lot of people might take it for granted. I think HIV and AIDS has taken something of a back burner with regards to the national conversation. So first of all, in TNT, you know, how is it treated? Is it something that people, for the most part, kind of sweep under the rug? They don't really want to take it on? Is there enough awareness of a lot of the challenges and support for those that have the HIV virus in the country?
Well, I will start by saying that it has unfortunately taken a back burner. It's not something that is talked about. It was almost muted by the COVID pandemic, which was detrimental actually to a lot of persons who had HIV, were still contracted HIV. And even so, the LGBT plus community, who were even more vulnerable, they were just completely invisibilized by the COVID pandemic. There's, in the World AIDS Day comes around once a year, and that's when we start to talk about HIV AIDS. That is not enough. The conversation has to continue. So definitely it has been pushed to the back burner, and it continues to affect people's daily lives.
Because this is a disease that, for all intents and purposes, you know, with NCDs, if you stop treatment, you do permanent damage to your body that you could just slow down, but you're not going to recover from. AIDS is, I guess you could say, potentially the same scenario, just potentially more accelerated. With regards to treatment, has there been serious disruption with the availability of doctors and medication, not just from the pandemic and the resources shifted to that, but also with the cost of living and the shipping imbalances, and even with the flooding recently? Have you all spoken to people with the disease? Do they have a lot of issues, logistical issues like that?
Well, okay, let me start by saying I wouldn't talk about this population as people with this disease.
Sorry.
Yeah, people living with it. So I'm not being picky about it, but I just think that quality disease kind of further stigmatizes it, and we're trying to move away from that. Yes, and I would say that having HIV already puts persons at a disadvantage, especially if you're from the queer community. And by queer community, I'm referring to lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersex, transgender persons, non-binary persons. When you have this sort of global, this sort of national disaster taking place like flooding, and you have persons who have HIV who might be unemployed or sex workers, or who are living really, really on the fringe of the economic generating sector of the economy, they are really, really severely impacted. So transport becomes an issue. Medicine is very strong, so they need to have food. The skyrocketing price of food has put them at a disadvantage. So just last week, I had a young man call me and ask me if I get him some food for the next 4 days, because he just didn't have any food. He couldn't take his medicine. He's feeling very ill. Furthermore, he couldn't even go to his follow-up appointment because he had no money for transport. So that's where KAISO steps in there and gives support. So I took him up to a medical research foundation at Trinidad and Tobago so he could get his treatment. But then the following week when he has to follow up again, he calls and he says, I can't go because I have no money. So these things happen all the time, but it's just swept under the carpet. So yes, there's medicine available, but the availability isn't the issue really, it's the accessibility to persons who are particularly vulnerable.
Right, and I think we kind of take it for granted. It's one thing for someone who doesn't have risk factors to go hungry. That's bad enough. But then when you have a disease and you kind of, your options are limited here with regards to your health, it just complicates matters further. Now, of course, y'all are here not necessarily just to speak about World AIDS Day, but y'all are here because KAISO is launching an HIV toolkit for the LGBTQ plus community today, I believe, with regards to specific challenges. Now, just before we get into the toolkit, because issues for your community, for the LGBTQ community. I think also, is it somewhat being swept under the rug? That's my perception as someone, of course, on the outside looking in. I don't necessarily see much, and sometimes that may be a good thing. You don't always see organized opposition or well, for basically say bluntly, we don't necessarily see hate groups popping up all over the place. But the flip side is I do wonder, do we have somewhat of an indifference, and that's causing an inertia for certain things for the LGBTQ community in TNT?
I'll jump in here to offer, some context. Definitely, there has been, we have had pushback throughout social media. There have been evangelical groups. Every time that, LGBTQI visibility comes to the fore, we would have some type of pushback. It's not to the extent where, there are organized hate groups at this point. But right now, homophobia and transphobia is so ingrained in our society that you'll hear it in conversations on the radio. You'll hear it in conversations at like a bar. You'll hear it, and then you'll be even treated in a particular way. If you're out and you're visibly, if you look anything remotely related to the LGBT community, you don't even have to be part of the community, but the perception is there, and then you're treated in, a negative way as a result. There's also the neglect of the community and the community's needs whenever we organize, and engage in national discussions on, health or anything related to our communities. It's kind of invisibilized. Sometimes the media participates as well in terms of, leaving out whenever the LGBT community is mentioned, but they'll add other things to their story. So it's systemic. The invisibilization of the LGBTQ community. So that's where our work comes into play. That's where we have co-conspirators like you guys at WESN who have been bringing us, on to talk about, our issues and stuff. And, all of the organizations that have been working with us to do, to continue to do the work and continue to be visible.
Okay, so...
If I may, I wanted to add one thing there.
Sure.
Okay, so I want to point out something very specific. You see, there are a lot of structures in place in society as it is that supports cisgender heterosexual persons. If you are a member of the queer community, these support systems are removed from you. So it's an additional layer of vulnerability. So in addition to just being treated differently because you're queer, just being able to go for a test becomes a problem if the guard at the door is watching you funny, if you're a trans woman and they're making fun of the way you look, if you were a feminine man and they're making fun of the way you speak or the way you present yourself. These things become deterrents to getting tested, to access to treatment, and to maintaining good treatment. So I just want to put in there that it is really important for us, not just as groups like CAISO, but for everybody to come in and support, make room to support these people who are actually outside of that catchment area. That happens just naturally for cishet persons. So we have some support groups that maybe Johanna or my colleague here will talk about later on.
Yes, I mean, I do fear that the indifference of those who don't care is fueling or giving too much space for those that want to, well, hate or to whatever degree. But of course, before we run out of time, we do have to speak with regards to, the launch of the toolkit that you have here. So I don't know if the author wants to now jump in, because obviously, if we have people who are going to be, ignorant, and a lot of it could be willful ignorance, a lot of it could be they choose to not want to hear it. But the long and short is we're going to have it for both HIV and AIDS, as well as for issues of the queer community. What is it now? I don't expect a lot of people, will then be able to put two and two together and figure out the specific challenges for LGBTQ individuals and having the virus. So what is it that caused you to want to create this toolkit? What are the issues specifically that you're trying to address?
Honestly, I wanted to create this toolkit, one, because when I reached out to CAISO, I had just come off an internship where I was looking into HIV and STI testing services online. And what I found was that there was not a lot of psychosocial care. There was not a lot of interpretation of what the community likes about things, what they want, what they need. So I said, oh, okay, what if I use my skill set with CAISO? And they already had something in the works, and we came up with this. And I found that in making this toolkit, it's mainly geared towards the LGBTQ community, with a focus on people living with HIV, but it's not only for them. It's for anybody who wants to learn more about the issues. It's for those working with the community. It's for those who want to be integrated to the community. It's not really a one-size-fits-all. It's a very open resource for everybody to use, to be honest.
Okay, so the toolkit itself now, of course, we're talking about it. What is it exactly? How accessible is it? Where can people find it and use it? Is it available to the general public? I assume it is.
I'll start by saying that yes, it's available. You can find it through CAISO's social media websites, to our CAISO.org, we'll be sharing multiple different areas you can find it, because it should be available for everybody. And the reason why it's such a good toolkit, what I like to think so as the author, is that it has so much information. It has foundational information like what is HIV, the transmission of HIV, prevention, treatment pathways. And as he said earlier, when he talked about the resources that are not available, we tried to reach out to different clinics, health centers, treatment sites to see what information we could get, what resources are available, where you could get it, the best places for the community to go to, and as much sex positive information as we could get, because I feel like that's something that's not really spoken about in terms of HIV, sex positivity. So we try to be very open with it. It's a not very clinical discussion. It's a very general, okay, you have HIV, how you can have sex, you live your life, you are a person, you're not stripped of your humanity because you have HIV.
I mean, it is interesting that I think Trinidad is in some ways quite liberal and in other ways very heavily conservative. And even with regards to the topic of sex, you actually see the dichotomy of how we could have people be very colorful in their language about their own endeavors and then very restrictive in how they want to speak about others. But, and that leads me now to, there's something you said there, that this toolkit is not necessarily just for the LGBTQ community. And, while I use the phrase issues that the community might be facing, really and truly, some of the actual topics that I'm implying or referring to,
they might not necessarily be limited just to the community. And this might be something for people to understand. The benefits is not just limited in some of these things to the LGBTQ community. I think, Ray, you were mentioning with regards to the stigma, just going for testing because of how people perceive you. And that could be widened to include a lot of different scenarios. And would you say that a lot of these things, for people who might want to kind of push you all off in the corner and say, well, this has nothing to do with me, would you say that, well, no, to some extent it does also potentially affect you, and this is why you should be an advocate for the rights of others, you know, because you yourself want someone to stand up for you?
HIV is everybody's business. It is everybody's business. I'm sure everyone here who's listening, who's not listening, knows someone, has been friends with someone, or has lost someone to HIV/AIDS. It's everybody's business. So it's not something that you can say, well, that doesn't concern me because I'm more moral and upright and up straight and I don't even have sex. You know, it doesn't work that way. It is a illness or a virus of public health significance. So you don't just get to quarantine yourself and say that doesn't bother me. It bothers you a lot. You just don't know it because you choose not to look at it that way. And that is part of the problem of stigmatization, of thinking that this is a queer disease that happens to queer people or people who behave a particular way. You tag the identity of the person to the illness, and that is not, no, we're not our illnesses. And you know, because I have cancer, you're going to look at me only as a cancer patient. So why you only look at me as a HIV positive person because I have HIV? It's not fair. And when you talk about treatment and access to treatment like PrEP, and you make an issue about how I behave sexually, you're being irresponsible, because we have a drug here that is crucial to the ending the AIDS epidemic. And rather than talk about how we could use PrEP or how we could keep people treatment adherent to eradicate HIV/AIDS, you have people in office of significance making irresponsible comments about people's sexual behavior being a cause of the illness, further stigmatizing and encouraging the wider public to discriminate against people. It is everybody's business. Sorry, I got a bit passionate there.
No, I fully understand, because I know somebody who they are concerned about their exposure to AIDS because they're a healthcare professional. So we need to understand that it's not just limited to a certain type of behavior in a certain type of way, and then we just put it in a box and we put as much layers in the box to separate us from that box and we're safe. And we need to understand that, first of all, you could just be a normal person living a very normal life. The circumstances of your orientation does not matter. The circumstances of your choices could be very benign, and then something goes wrong somewhere. But I hate to say this, but we are very much out of time on this segment. I want to thank you all for coming, all three of you all for giving of your time. I hope this is not the last time that we could speak to you, because I do believe that there are a lot of wider ethical concerns here that we as a nation, it's not so much that we haven't addressed it, we just seem to be very reluctant to start the conversation in a lot of arenas. So hopefully we could continue to build on a start here.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for having us. As usual, comrade, we appreciate the folks at WESN, and I hope wishing you and your viewers a great day.
Well, folks,
thank you.
That is, of course, our representative from KAISO. Now, when we return, I'll continue with more of the discussion. We have a lot of challenges to face, and not a lot of time to talk about it. But stay tuned. When we return, the conversation will continue. We'll be right back.
Whether it's a room for 1, 2, 3 or more, there's a room waiting with the ocean view almost to your door. Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, the perfect getaway when you don't want to travel far. The Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, Crown Point, Tobago. Call 639-8571 for your reservation.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you do in Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
it makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white, and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about diseases that affect the ear, nose, and throat.
For allergic rhinitis, the treatment is usually probably a nasal spray, antihistamine, even steam inhalation or saline washouts of the nose, and so on. Patients always asking for antibiotics, and so the first line treatment is not antibiotics, just to clear that up.
I joined the Women's National Senior Football team during one of their training sessions. And today I have with me Tamika Forbes, who is the gold star goalkeeper for the National Trinidad and Tobago Women.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day.
You, and I've known you for so many years, you going for them. You know, it's only a cause. You will rescue, you know, and you're going. But I want to find out about that passion. Where did it come from?
Well, you know, I've thought about that a lot. I think it's a combination of my family upbringing and my faith.
We see sometimes that stillbirth or miscarriage might have higher rates of mental health complications, or abortion has higher rates of mental health complications.
Believe that whatever God allows has great potential to become your greatest win.
You are stronger than you know. So much stronger than you think.
No matter what they say, living in victory every day.
Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. We just had 3 representatives from CAISO, and today is World AIDS Day. They were here to talk about a toolkit launch with regards to the HIV virus and AIDS. And again, just to recap, it is an issue that we can't necessarily just push to the side and say it has nothing to do with me, and I'm fine and I don't really care, because we would want someone to advocate about the things that directly matter to us, on top of the fact that HIV is not limited to any demographic, geographic, political affiliation. It could affect all of us. And it's just one of those things that we do probably need to be more careful about, more mindful about, and be more understanding about. In part, again, because we would want somebody with regards to the things that are directly affecting us to be more mindful, to be more respectful, to be more understanding. Now, I say this to segue into what's going on again with the flooding. Because apparently, you know, I'm sure most of you have heard of the stories where the Minister of Works and Transport and the Minister of Public Utilities, no, not local government, not public utilities, I believe. They went to Bamboo, one of the settlements, and the public offloaded on them, gave them a piece of their mind. And it seems as though some of the members of that community, they're apologetic. And I understand that because there's a good chance that maybe they might have said something that they regret, that out of anger, but it doesn't necessarily represent them and their values and their character. And I get that. But the flip side is, this situation is not so simple. You know, we're not talking about, oh, you know, there's a leak in your road and there's a pothole and I'm vexed. You know, we're talking about the fact that a lot of these people potentially lost a significant chunk of their life, of what they have built up throughout the course of their life. Not just the house and the damage to the house itself, but the stuff in the house as well. During a time where the economy is presenting a lot of challenges to a lot of people. Now, thankfully, some of the national stakeholders, like the Supermarket Association, among others, have said that they're going to step up and try to help. The question is, and granted, helping someone is not literally just we're going to replace everything they lost, you know, unless you're an insurance company, depending on the terms of the conditions that the person, the person that went through the ordeal that they intended, it's not so simple. Right? We can't necessarily replace everything, but try to help people get back on their feet. That is something commendable. But I don't understand necessarily why we have to apologize. And more importantly, again, not only do I think that the ministers should exercise and show understanding, compassion, restraint, and to some extent, be advocates of these communities still affected by floodwaters. But we, the general public, should do so as well. Because, again, we would want when something directly affects us. And hey, there might come a day when you think that, you know, HIV is just something that affects others, it doesn't affect me. That's a common fallacy by human beings. Crime, war, murder, violence, cancer, HIV, other terminal disease and illnesses. That happens to others. That doesn't happen to me. That's why smokers, there are some smokers who, you know what, they stop caring, or they're willfully ignorant to the damage they're doing to their body. Same thing with diabetics and sugar. Some try to manage it, some they just don't care. Or the heart disease. I think I know of one individual who died relatively young in his 40s. I'm not too sure to what extent it was because he wasn't taking care of his health. You know, it's one thing if you're marginal and borderline at 80. It's another thing when you're being reckless at 40 or 30 or 20. But these things can affect us. We might be in denial. And when they do affect us, wouldn't we want someone to advocate on our behalf as well? And that's the thing with this country. I think we are too used, and on site, Sule Joseph, he had this conversation with regards to culturally, we seem to be quite content with just accepting things, you know. We jam in still. But part of it is we have to start to exercise our rights and exercise our judgment, because not everything warrants a protest. A stop-and-go a protest in the government, no. Right? My boss is demanding that I work 8 hours a day. No, that's not really protest worthy. But other things, like accessibility to health care, like educating the population against social stigmas, like holding our leaders accountable. Perhaps these things should have a little bit of protests or movements. It doesn't have to all be placards around the savannah or in front of the Red House or marching down the highway. It doesn't always have to be that. But those are obvious ways for the public to show, to rally support for something. It could be other ways as well. But the long and short is, are we really doing it? Do we really take it seriously? Do we understand the implications? Because it's not that we don't see advocacy just for this or that. It's that I don't really see it across the board. And I will go back to the fact that we now have had multiple children get shot. We don't really seem to care as much as we used to do with regards to murders before. Why is that? Why would we accept that? And our politicians, they're very tribal. And that's a very human thing to do as well. Be tribal, my side, your side. We do it all the time. Let's be real. We do it all the time. My community, your community. You're outsider. You're new here. You're new to the job. You're new to the neighborhood. You're new to the country. Sometimes representatives of our society could be mature, could understand that it's not so simple. Let's not give in to our childlike, immature side where we just want to look at outsiders as other. Not always. And it really kind of, makes me wonder, the whole all are we as one family. But part of that is speaking up when you see something wrong. See something, say something. Sound familiar? It's not just for crime, It's about a lot of things. And the problem is we might get paralyzed by the fact that, there's so many things. There's so many things. How do we fix it all? How do we advocate for it all? Because then if we try to advocate for all the things that need to be advocated for, the list might be a mile long. And then people might say, well, oh gosh, we can't fix all of that. Come on, man, be realistic. Well, yeah, because we allowed it to get out of hand. Because we allow the system, the bureaucracy, our politics. And again, there's some responsibility for the politicians, but then there's the population. See, my hand is going off the screen. Because at the end of the day, the population is the entire society. Our politicians, our criminals, our police officers, our bureaucrats, they all come from us. They're your neighbors, your brothers and sisters, your cousins, your uncles, your aunts, your parents, your children. They come from us. So to some extent, we have a part to play with what goes wrong in the bureaucracy of the government. Because we also like it so. So now we have these floods. Now we're seeing, hey, let's see how bad flooding could get. Let's see how bad the murder rate could get. Let's see how bad that our general health care could get. Let's see how bad our road and traffic plan can get. Let's see how bad the maintenance of our facilities can get with regards to not just schools that need renovations, but the recently renovated Red House. Let's see how bad our border security could get with regards not just to hard, violent crime or things that drive hard, violent crime, but immigration. It's not as though we could support an infinite amount of immigrants, but we don't know what controls we have. Let's see how bad our economic forecasting, our economic balancing act, our economic development, our job creation could get. Yes, the petrochemical energy side of the economy is doing okay, it's doing well. The Prime Minister It's not as though there's no foresight. He had foresight, and it's paying off. Some of it would have probably paid off regardless of the war in Ukraine. Some of it, or the timing of it, though, this unexpected event is beneficial. But where's the private sector job creation? The services industry, the small and micro enterprises that kind of drive and create new businesses. All of the big brands we have now didn't necessarily start off big right away, you know. So that's the thing. I think if you told somebody 40 years ago, somebody of influence, 40 years ago, one of our leaders back then, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, this is the extent that these problems could reach to. How bad traffic in the country, flooding in the country, the lack of job creation from the private sector in the country, the labor market issues in the country, the foreign exchange problem in the country, the crime problem in the country, the lack of planning in the country, the issues with public utilities in the country. This is how far these issues and problems could grow, the extent. They might be like, nah, how would we're not going to allow it to get that bad. You know, we'll allow a little bit of bad now because, you know, we like it so. But the little grows. And because it grows incrementally, we don't necessarily see it. We can't fathom. It's like we don't notice how our family members change in appearance as they get older if we live with them every day. But when you spend some time apart, those changes seem stark. We've lived with these issues day by day, and they have grown. And now they are growing potentially out of control. And what are we doing about it? Well, we're jamming still. We like it so. Folks, we have to take a break for news on the hour. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines. Of course, feel free to talk about anything you want to talk about. But of course, today's World AIDS Day, so if there's any issues or stories or anecdotes, good or bad, call in. Let us say what you have to say. And of course, we welcome disagreement, but be prepared for debate if I disagree with you. Okay, let's take a break. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines. Here is your WESN News on the hour. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Supply vessel in Heritage Field sinks. Chambers promised flood relief in the amount of $250,000 for flood-affected citizens. Sangre Grande residents suffering, says chairman. Teen in court for robbery offenses. And internationally, Japan court upholds ban on same-sex marriage. Now for the details. The Trinity Group of companies has confirmed that their vessel, liftboat Daniela, has capsized and now sits on the seafloor, no longer posing a risk to any of the Heritage Petroleum platforms or installations. On the morning of November 30th, at about 8 a.m., the vessel was engaged in routine operations preparing for departure from Heritage Petroleum well S822 Northfield. Shortly after the vessel developed a list, the vessel's captain made the safe decision to abandon the ship, whereby all crew and personnel were evacuated to a nearby vessel, which transported them back to the base in Point Fortin. The business chambers have promised flood relief for flood-affected citizens to the tune of over $200,000. TT Chamber President Charles Pashley says the move came following a call for assistance from Sewer TT.
The joint chambers decided to donate $250,000 to assist Sewer TT on the ground in aid for the flood victims. This would include everything from bottled water to hot meals that they're actually delivering on a daily basis to the flood victims.
The chamber president also gave his opinion on what may be the cause of the flooding that has been occurring over the last few days.
Flooding, quite frankly, is all of our fault in inverted commas. I think that there's a level of infrastructural challenges that we've not addressed over the last 40 years. I do think that some errant contractors have also built on where they should not have. So those two things together, I think, along with the increased rainfall.
Chairman of the Sangre Grande Regional Corporation, Anil Jutaram, has lamented that residents in the corporation continue to suffer due to the incessant flooding.
They are very, very frustrating. You know what it is to be flooded out 11 times in 1 month? It's really, really heartbreaking to see these people, the look on their faces, the frustration, and a lot of these things are man-made up. It's not just climate change we're talking about and global warming.
A 15-year-old boy was arrested by officers of the Central Division in connection with a report of robbery with aggravation which occurred in the Caripachima district on Friday. Investigations into the incident resulted in officers of the Freeport Criminal Investigations Department arresting and charging the teenager for robbery with violence and robbery with aggravation. He is expected to appear before the Faizabad Children's Court to answer to the charges. Internationally, a Tokyo court has upheld a ban on same-sex marriage in Japan, but also said that the ban was a violation of human rights. The compensation case was brought by 4 couples who claimed the law was discriminatory. Japan is currently the only G7 nation that does not recognize same-sex marriage. Campaigners have welcomed the ruling as an indication to the government that it needs to change the law. Well, that's the news on the hour on WESN. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. So, just before we open the phone line, I would like to say this. If, with regards to my interview and how I addressed HIV or AIDS or the LGBTQ community, if my terminology was not necessarily to the liking of any of my viewers, I do apologize. I don't claim to be an expert on these things, so I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs. However, I'm not necessarily going to run from the conversation that I believe is important to have, and I try to be respectful. Honest mistakes, if they were made, I apologize again. I think, however, again, it's important that we don't shy away from these topics, because I think in TNT that seems to be something of a problem. We like to shy away from a lot of things. We just like to shelve things, as my colleague Sule Joseph from Psych would say. You know, we just put it on a shelf and then we kind of ignore it and hope it goes away all on its own. And, well, human life is just not that convenient. What can I say? So now let's open up the phone lines and hear from you, the viewer. World AIDS Day, you want to talk about that? Let's talk about that. The continued flooding, you want to talk about that? Let's talk about that. Should the residents apologize to the ministers? Should they have? Or would they justify what they had to say? I mean, maybe if some colorful language is used, maybe, all right, fine, apologize for the language, but I don't know if they should apologize for being upset. Of course, with regards to crime, with regards to anything, if you want to call in, have your say, please call in early. Please do not call in late. I promise you, if you call in after 9:20, if 200 people call in after 9:20, we're not going to have the time to get to everybody. So please call in as soon as possible. One thing that I wanted to talk about that I could not get to in the previous segments. So the High Court has denied the injunction to prevent local governments, councillors and aldermen from continuing office for another year after Friday or after Saturday. Yes. And to some extent, while on principle, I actually might agree that this extension of the term of office of local government councillors and aldermen might not be correct. It might be unethical. I could understand why a High Court judge does not want to make that ruling. I mean, again, this is precedent-setting. This is a precedent-setting ruling. And to what extent do they think there's enough to stop it? And there might not be. You know, constitutionally, I don't think anything illegal was done to get this result. So what is unethical might not always be technically illegal, might not be a crime, might not even be an offense, might not even be something civilly that we could pursue. But I also think that, right, it's the High Court. Will this be now taken to the appeal, to the Court of Appeal, and then to the Privy Council? And perhaps they might be more appropriate to make such a determination. I mean, I guess we will see. I guess we will see. Because, well, local government, or the lack thereof, with regards to resources, with regards to effective management, with regards to, I don't know, well, with regards to being out there, showing leadership, showing concern, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag in part because the situation is complex. The situation is complex because we have two political parties that seem to be, well, very uncooperative for the most part. Anyway, we have our first caller from Diego Martin. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Small.
Morning, morning.
And good morning, Ethan, wherever he is. I just want to make a comment concerning the visit by the Minister of Works and Paris Arbari. I mean, I understand the people's emotions and so on and things, but, and I mean, the situation that they're in, I see where they're coming from, but it is not really a good thing to do, and to behave in that manner when you depend on these people to do things for you as well. It would have been a different story if it didn't show up. That would be another different topic. So I think they should have, try to control themselves and whatnot. But as I say, in the moment, in the case, people do things that, they cannot control themselves. It's just unfortunate, and I apologize to the minister on behalf of the people of Bamboo number 2. I also am very disappointed that once again, where is the leadership in this country? You're not hearing by the Prime Minister and the President. I mean, good heavens, what do you need again, a disaster more than what is happening here? Is partly half of the country has been cut off. Some people are in desperate need of help, and at least if you don't want to visit, I expect at your age you might want to go there, I think. But at least come on the television or come and make an announcement, comfort the people and give them some sort of hope and, to carry on with them. Their lives, you could see this day and people are them. So, Guy, you take it. Have a very good morning and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, caller.
Okay.
Lack of leadership, lack of communication, lack of accountability. Now, to some extent, again, this is a situation that we have allowed, that we have fostered. We can't just blame it all on everybody else. And ironically speaking, some of these issues that we have across the nation, while there are certain functions that the government is supposed to carry out, services that we need them to provide because the private sector is not necessarily going to do it for us. And private sector does not just mean big business. Huh? It means everybody. The doubles man on the street is part of the private sector. Just remember that. So with that said, it's not easy, but at the same time, they're the ones that are in the role. And we need more out of the ones in the role. I'm not going to say that the job is an easy job. I understand that. I get that. But I do think that the way how we have set up our politics, as I said before the caller gave his contribution, I don't know to what extent the parties collaborate, work together, compromise. We don't really hear that. And that and all is setting up a situation where it's difficult to get things done. And it makes the politician's job harder. The opposition is enjoying it now, but when the roles are reversed, when, not if, it's just a matter of time. I don't know how long it will be. You know, they will be suffering under the same thing too. And who's benefiting? Not the country. So we have a caller from Tunapuna. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
I'm calling from Tunapuna. In respect of the minister's visit to the Bamboo, I am in total support of the residents from Bamboo and the residents from elsewhere, where these ministers are too famous with their lies, and the people are getting fed up with their lies, and mainstream media is not attending to the lies that is disseminating from Rowley. Come back. We have to be real and fair. So we cannot take on the lies of these people. They go all about and make lies, and then the residents have to be blamed for all kind of nonsense. No, it must stop. And they're going to be worse. They kick water in one, they run one, they're going to be worse than this, you know. Because the people, most of these residents are more independent people, you know. They don't study political party and things so, you know. While they are trying to vote and so on, politics for them comes second, you know, unlike the other political party, you know. Right? So let us be careful. This thing going to end up bad.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. Now, caller had a point to make. I agree with most of it. I disagree with some of it. I understand, I get it when callers and people say the government lies. Because I get why people would say politicians lie. Because mass communication is not easy. Right? What is easy is making mistakes in mass communication. The key is which ones are intentional and which ones are unintentional. And as someone in media, I can't easily say if it was intentional or unintentional. Right? Then I could be held liable for slander without evidence. And of course, politicians, the government, the opposition, they don't necessarily give enough of themselves so that we could make a determination one or the other. But just note, caller, that politicians lie. And I would say that a lot of it is very crafty, indirect ways, and some of it might be unintentional on both sides. So that's why I'm not necessarily looking to just say the government. With regards to that general behavior, what I will say is this. The results from the last week, they are the ones in the role. They are the ones to be held responsible for the response of now. And this is not the first flooding we had for the year. It's not even the third or fourth or fifth flooding we had in the year. This might be the fifth flooding that area might have had in the last couple of months. We have two callers on the line. First from Shogunas. Good morning, caller.
Good day, gentlemen. Once again, you forget the reason for all these problems. It is a matter of law and order.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about all these floods in Bamboo. And what nobody is saying that all those there were supposed to be agricultural settlements. We have a set of industries going there which have compounded the problem. And we have to look at all our laws.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pick and choose law to enforce. You bring an ambassador there who don't seem to know that. Because all the things I have talked about, I have seen no attempt. What people are saying, these bad rules, we have them here in Shogunas every day. We have right not far from the market. You cannot park there for the longest while because the whole road is mud. The road is not being repaired. This has nothing to do with flood. Like they expect God to come down here and clean the drain for them. This is not acts of God. This is acts of negligence. Gentlemen, unless you have any questions.
Well, just two things. One, I just want to remind people that some of these things might be beyond our media ambassadors' rank and responsibility to see about
So
directly.
you don't report when he finish with you?
I'm just saying, we could tell him.
Don't report. Next time he come, ask him if he just tell his superiors what you said.
Right. And the other thing is, Professor, actually, we did listen to you. And I believe this week I did not just bring up the lack of law and order, the lack of planning, but I referenced you when I made that statement.
About today.
Well, I already, I mean, I don't want to repeat myself, Professor. I already mentioned it.
Today you have to repeat yourself because today we dealing with the problem.
Well, Professor, I mean, that's why we have you to bring up the key points.
Somebody interfere with the river bank there. Did you hear the minister say he's going to do anything about it? And that is the problem. Okay,
Thank you.
gentlemen, thanks for your
Thank you. That's a good point. We hear the blame, but quite often we don't have the follow-up of, and this is how we will make sure it never happens again. We don't necessarily have that. Our next caller from Port of Spain. Good morning, caller. Morning.
Sean, this matter in the bamboo is a matter where we do things wrong all the time in this country, and it comes back at some later date to bite us hard. This is not the first time there have been floods in the bamboo, but if we remember how the bamboo emerged as a community, we would know that it was never intended to be residential, nor to be occupied in the way it has been occupied. That having been said, and because the state did nothing over a long period, over decades, to fix it, we now have a situation where the claims of the people of the bamboo must be recognized as legitimate claims. What is perhaps more important as we speak is there are reports that some contractor would have cut the bank of the river and did not do what was necessary in time to ensure that it was returned to its normalcy, so that the water that we have seen in Valsayn South and North is as a result of that. And there is no doubt that the water that we are experiencing in the bamboo is also part of that. We have had an inordinate amount of rain, that is a given. And the bottom line is, the water cannot go out if the tides are high. It happens, certainly in the context of Port of Spain, you know that if you have 40 minutes of rain and the tides are high, downtown Port of Spain will flood because we have not, as it were, treated with this matter as a priority. Everything else is a priority because we want to build big buildings. We want to build new police stations. We want to build hospitals. We want to build ministry buildings because all of these things afford somebody along the line to do well. And that has been the history in this country. We want to build a big airport in Tobago. We don't want to build an airport. We want to build a big airport so that the benefits for somebody down the line will be substantial. We can't go forward on an agenda where the individual needs and wants are more important than the needs and wants of the entire society. So that we have to look at the thing in the bamboo and Valsayn and all these places with good vision. But I want to, if you will permit me, I want to say what is happening to people in Vancouver, what is happening to people in Mayaro, Woodlands. These are places that nobody is talking about.
Yes.
But these places need to get equal focus as we speak.
Well,
and I say to you, these are places that were, for by and large, legitimate places for construction.
Well, caller, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to end there.
I always find that you end me, but you allow other people to go on ad infinitum. But I rest my case.
Caller,
blessings to you, Sean.
That's not fair. That's not fair. Quickly, before we have to take a break, but quickly, I just want to say that yes, Mr. Porter Spain is correct. You can't basically just not enforce your laws, and then a natural disaster happens, and then you want to blame the people because you didn't enforce your laws. You can't retroactively apply things. Unfortunately, it is what it is. You allow it to happen, now it's happened, now the responsibility has to be borne. When you shouldn't have to bear it, but this is something that we have heard before in this country with regards to lack of planning, squatting, etc., etc., etc. We seem to be fine with it, and I don't know why we are happy to bear the consequences when we never seem to be happy to bear the consequences, so now the government has to bear the consequences of allowing it. Now you have to help these people. You can't just complain that, well, they're not supposed to be there. No, too late for that. Too late for that. They're there. You allow them to be there. You have to help them. And also, what I don't understand is why haven't politicians figured out, well, you still have to have contracts to maybe dig these canals or improve the drainage or to have all of this work done. There are contracts to be awarded there. And the goodwill your party might get to say, we were the ones to help solve or even just reduce flooding. I mean, that'll be a big deal. Ironically, that would be development I would like to see. If nationally we could get a grip on this, that would be development that I would like to see because it supports our growing urbanization as our population grows. Long-term development to help support our growth. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show. I don't know if we'll have another caller to take, but time, the crunch. I warned you, if you didn't call early, you might not get in. So let's take a break. When we return, my final thoughts.
Make every occasion a sparkling celebration with Rosabella alcohol-free wine.
Toast cheers with hourglass rays. Rosabella, live life with Rosabella sparkling drink. Celebrate!
Your Christmas is safe with us at BCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union. Your Christmas is safe with us at BCU. Police Credit Union. BCU. Police Credit Union.
Get an easy zero-interest Christmas loan at Police Credit Union today. Borrow up to $25,000 with affordable monthly payments. New members, you get up to $10,000. No interest, no installments until January. Apply online at www.policecreditunion.com. Loan subject to credit approval.
Whether it's your family meet and eat or your own personal getaway retreat, a business trip accommodation or a couple's celebration, the Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa has room for you. There's always sumptuous, delicious cuisine and the gym and tennis court for a good workout routine. Then relax by the pool or on the private beach or just head to the spa. It's also within reach. The Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, Tobago's best beach resort. For reservations, call 639-8571 or check our website.
Better Value Limited has been making gift giving easier and more affordable for over 26 years. Power tools, indoor, outdoor furniture and accessories, mini appliances, designer fragrances, houseware and home decor products, and all your bridal registry items. Now in stock, our stylish loft bed and study desk combo unit for just $16.50. Better Value Limited. Call 235-3709 or visit us at Princestown or Gullview or check our Facebook page.
The best birthday gifts are at thebesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Have a content capital Christmas. It's the best time of the year. Now I know we have no snow, but Christmas is still here. Ho ho, the Christmas shows each week for all to see. Movie classics wait for you and the local content for free. Have a content capital Christmas, and in case you didn't hear, oh by golly, have a content capital Christmas this year. Welcome back to Talking Point. And just before we end the show, a little bit of good news. Maybe it's too little, some might argue, but you know what? I will take any good news I can get. And ironically, as someone who has basically been saying, well, where's the Defense Force? Where's the Coast Guard? Blah, 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 blah. All of these able bodies, are they part of the response? What are they doing? We don't know. I mean, national security, do we need them? Well, soldiers... they took some kidney dialysis patients, I believe, from their homes, people who, well, they could not necessarily travel due to the floodwaters, etc. They took them for dialysis. They took them for their treatment. These are members of our Defense Force. And these sorts of things, yes, I am happy to see. I could get behind. These are the kind of things that we need to help people when they cannot help themselves. That is ultimately what the government is there for, first and foremost, to do the things that we might not be able to do. Some of these elderly patients, they might not know anybody that could help them. They might not be able to contact anybody, know who to go to ask for help. The government, of course, now having measures in place, and the Defense Force soldiers, well, that's one of the tools that the government has with regards to things like this. And I'm happy to see it. But I would like to see more because we have so much more needs, especially now. Especially now. But isn't now the time to come together? I mean, Christmas, the spirit of Christmas, the sharing, the caring, the giving, not just the receiving. But I am merely asking. I am merely but one man calling for us to come together. I mean, at the end of the day, it's in the motto, it's in the coat of arms. All are we in this together. Together, we will achieve. Hopefully, we can make it happen. As my co-host would say, today is a good day to have a good day. So let's try and do whatever we can to make it a good day. Donate an item of food, canned, whatever, one item, or better yet, a meal. Donate to those in need to help with the recovery from these floods, to help someone have just a little bit of a nicer Christmas. All our way is one family. This is Talking Point on WESN. I'm Sean Michael Small. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Christmas coming, here is all around. Christmas back in town. Christmas coming, here